Welcome to the Assurance Show. This podcast is for internal auditors and performance auditors. We discuss risk and data-focused ideas that are relevant to assurance professionals. Your hosts are Conor, McGarrity, and Yusuf Moolla.
This is episode 0, and we're recording this on the 12th of October 2020. It is going live, and then we're going to backdate it to before this podcast started. So this sounds a bit counterintuitive, but let's just explain. We deliberately recording this episode 8 months and 23 episodes into the show. If you are already a regular listener, you'll probably know most of what we have to say in this episode. If you are new to the show, the purpose of this episode is to outline what the show is about, who it's for, and what the structure is. We had an idea when we started, but we knew that this would evolve, and it has evolved over the last few months. And we now have a more defined structure and approach with the wizardry of modern podcasting. You can actually record and make it appear as though it was published earlier than it did. And so this episode will appear as though it was published on the 10th of February 2020. But the reality is that we recorded it much later. So it's going to sound a little bit strange because we're talking about something in the past.
I feel like one of those actors in Back to the Future, trying to figure out what happened when and making sure we don't influence things that we shouldn't be influencing in the past that is actually the future.
Yes, as long as I'm Marty and you Doc, right?
I'll take that.
Okay, fantastic. All right, we're going to talk about the audience, the structure, how episodes are published, what we've covered, what else we expect to be talking about, who we are, what Risk Insights does, and how listeners can get involved in the podcast. Let's start with the audience. Who is this podcast for, Conor? What's the main audience? Who are we talking to?
The broad audience is assurance professionals. Most of the work we do is with internal auditors and performance auditors. So our conversations will be focused on that.
There may be some financial auditors that this will be relevant to, but we're not really focused on financial audit. The topics that we go through are data focused. If you have any interest in the use of data within audit, and every auditor, internal or performance, should definitely have at least an interest in the use of data, a lot of the topics will be about that.
And that's the constant theme through every single episode we have, is focusing on data for the work of assurance professionals.
The structure of the show is primarily you and I having a discussion on a topic based on experience we've had long ago or more recent experiences. The majority of it will be more recent experiences and where our thinking is in relation to particular topics. That's the main fortnightly episodes that come out, will be you and I having a discussion that is relevant to internal auditors and performance auditors, primarily with a focus on data. We then have started now guest interviews. Episode 22 was our first guest interview. That was with a CRO for a global digital bank. We have a few lined up, a few more guests on the show. That's not the primary structure, but we will be putting guests in from time to time. Now, that won't interrupt the regular fortnightly release of episodes. What we would usually do, though, is put it in between one of those episodes. So when we have a guest, we'd put it on the alternate Monday. This show comes out Monday, 5 a.m. Brisbane time, Sunday in the US, and it's not going to be any later than Monday, 8 a.m. anywhere in the world because we are so close to sunrise.
The guests we choose will depend on the emerging issues or things that are topical and what we're seeing happening both in our work or in the larger assurance environment.
Expect to see guest episodes every now and then on an alternate Monday to the fortnightly Monday that we publish the regular episodes. In terms of what we've already covered, there's quite a few episodes. We've gone over 20 episodes. But what we've already covered as at the time that we're recording this would be topics like smaller data sets, how to think about overcoming some of the challenges that you face in using data in audit, what the key principles you need to be aware of when using data in audit are, the benefits of using complaints within your audit process, and there'll be a few others.
One of the ones that stood out to me was data-related terminology and how we need to get consistent around how we use these terms that are being thrown around. That was pretty important and foundational. Another one was how assurance professionals can find themselves limited by the auditing software that's out there and how we need to reframe our thinking around addressing objectives and looking for the outcomes rather than being compartmentalized into software that's available.
Sounds good. We haven't had a very deliberate sequencing of the way in which the episodes are released either. So You don't have to go episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They don't all build on each other. They are fairly standalone, although there may be a few episodes here and there where we refer to earlier ones. What else we know we're going to be talking about? Well, we have a future plan and we're working through exactly how to sequence that, because what we found is that it kind of makes sense to think about this a little bit out, but we're not going to structure it too much that we can give ourselves the freedom to think about emerging risks. In terms of who we are individually, you'll hear episode 19 talks about who Conor McGarrity is. We introduce Conor and go through his life growing up in Ireland. You'll hear a little bit about me in episode 25 or 26 if we can get to it, and Conor can ask me reasonable questions that I can answer. In terms of what Risk Insights does, we provide data-focused advice, delivery, quality assurance, and review. And our focus is assurance practitioners and integrity agencies. In terms of how listeners can get involved, so how you can get involved in this podcast, key things are providing feedback to us, and you can do that via the contact forms on our website. Or you can ask questions. More than happy to take questions from listeners that we can explore as episodes or parts of episodes. If you know somebody that would be worthwhile having as a guest on the show, somebody that can help provide insights that would be relevant to internal auditors and or performance auditors, feel free to suggest that as well, again, using the contact form on our website.
And we're interested in contrarianism, not just people who might agree with what we talk about on the show, but those people that might have a contrary view that they want to talk about.
Yep. So if you listen to episode 22, you'll hear us talking to Joseph Watson. That was our first guest interview. And that's the sort of conversation that we like to have, where we're not necessarily trying to recreate everything and we're not throwing everything out the cot, but we're also saying that there's a range of things that need to be done better. That's what the show is about. Enjoy listening to the episodes. We really do enjoy putting them together. There's a lot of work, as we found over the last few months. There's a lot of work that goes into preparing for them, editing them, getting them live. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to shoot it across. The feedback that we have had over the last few months has helped us significantly in producing what we think is now a quality show.
And the content will only get better the more feedback we get.
That's the end of episode 0. We hope you enjoy the show.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please share with a friend and rate us in your podcast app. For immediate notification of new episodes, you can subscribe at assuranceshow.com. The link is in the show notes.